Dr. Horton, you've had a long and rich history in medicine. How did you get started in medicine?
My grandfather, father, uncle, both uncles, and a great-grandfather made me the fourth generation of wanting to go into medicine from our family. My son's now the fifth generation. He is a doctor also. But I grew up wanting to be a family doctor, because that's what they were in little towns in the country. And I didn't know anything about the cosmetic surgery in California, New York, Miami. I didn't know anything about plastic surgery, and how I got there is a winding path, but an interesting one.
Tell us about that path.
Well, I was able to go to medical school early because it was World War II. And at 18, you registered for the draft, and they were ordinarily taking all healthy people, and I was healthy. I was in the Army Specialized Training Program, which was a very fortunate break for me because they paid my tuition and my books, and we had to drill, we had to stay in barracks, we had to go Saturday morning and march, and we did a lot of things as a private first class in addition to medical school. But if you failed in medical school, you were shipped out next week, and so nobody wanted to lose their status in medical school, and I finally graduated. But the year I graduated, the war was over. This was the Korean War when I was in medical school. And World War II was over, and I had a period of time I could train, and I went to general surgery at George Washington University, and then the Korean War intervened. And we were all called back in because we had an obligation for service, which was right, that we should have been called back in. And they asked me where I would like to go. My chief of surgery at George Washington University was a good friend in Washington, D.C. of all the services, and he recommended the Navy at Bethesda, and they said they would like to have me there, so I reported to the Navy, and the man looked at me, and the admiral who was in charge said, general surgeons are a dime a dozen. We'll send you to a hemorrhoid ward, and you can have your own ward in about 6 or 8 weeks. But in the meantime, waiting for this doctor to ship out on a ship, Captain Crawford is the head of plastic surgery here and needs some help. So I went and opened the door to Captain Crawford and his 3 huts of absolute horrible problems, mangled people from the Korean War. And I remember what Hippocrates said thousands of years ago. He was talking to a medical school class, and he said, young gentlemen, those of you who seek surgery, go find a war. And that's still true. That war is what put me into plastic surgery. There were probably not more than 100 plastic surgeons in the United States at that time, but I was fortunate to get a residency at Duke University. And when I finished, I had won an award of the Foundation of Plastic Surgery for a year's trip with the giants of the field all over the world, fully paid for by the Plastic Surgery Foundation. I had submitted my paper for the research work I'd done at Duke, and they had given me the first prize. And there were also 15 or 20 other doctors there from other parts of the world who were doing the same thing, and I began to learn and know people from other countries, so that when I got back, I could write to my friends in Argentina, in Australia, in New Zealand, and Japan, and they would know me and remember me and would go on trips with me. And so when I started going on these trips, I was able to call on these people from all over the world who literally joined us in trying to help other people.
You certainly had a glorious career in plastic surgery, but in that process you came up with this concept of Physicians for Peace. How did that get started?
It grew. I went thinking it was a small trip, first to Haiti, and then I was president of the Rotary Club here in town, and we were able to gather material from the old Norfolk General Hospital, which was being torn down at that time and a new wing being built. And we could take the operating tables and the cabinets and the beds and the everything, lights, generator. No roads in Haiti at that time. It was still being run by the Marines, and the Marines would fly us to Jeremy, where we were building this little hospital, in their helicopter. That was my first helicopter ride. And we built that hospital, and 2 years later, Papa Doc took it away, and we had to leave. But it is open now, and we have been back to Haiti many times, and several of our new programs are in Haiti. They are one of the neediest nations in the world.
You have personally been on dozens of missions with Physicians for Peace. What would you say was your most memorable moment?
Several, and I don't know how I would classify it, but one of the most memorable moments was when I was with the Turkish doctors near Van, and the Kurdish border was nearby, and a refugee camp was nearby, and we took some of the Kurdish refugee victims of Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction. And I will never forget operating on a little girl who had been burned with gas, and her arm had grown to her chest, and she couldn't pull her arm away, and the long, tall father was there thanking us and the Turks for taking care of his child, and we operated successfully, and we were able to get her arm freed, so she should be living a normal life. Another moment is when I took 2 busloads of Palestinian doctors and Israeli doctors, and we went to Israeli hospitals and hospitals in the Gaza Strip, and we worked together as teams, one on each side, Israelis, Palestinians. And they were friends. This was before the Intifada. They were friends and still write to each other and still understand and like each other. So it was easy to see that boundaries could be broken. The whole thing behind Physicians for Peace is to try to get people to use medicine as a path to understanding each other and becoming friends. And I think those things are highlights. I had many others, but those are highlights.
Dr. Horton, what would you like your legacy to be?
I don't have a legacy. I'm just an ordinary worker. And I would just like to continue as long as I physically can. I'm 81. It's getting harder. And I would like to see the young people that you've assembled stir and go ahead and use the mechanisms that we have tried to develop, which were not present when we first started PFP. No one had really tried to get a multidisciplinary group together to work in needy areas. There is no end to the need. We've gone to 50 plus different countries. We need to go to 50 more different countries. But the main thing is we need to recognize that as a country, we are making friends for the United States. There's no better friend than a mother whose little kitty has been taken care of by an American doctor. There's no better friend than a father who gets medicine to take care of the sick boy that he has, or the father who is sick and can't work and can't make a living to buy food for the family. And when America does that, we don't need guns and ships and ammunition. We still should have those. But this is one way that we have not exploited fully to really start to make friendships through medical care. And I think that's really what we've started.